Welcome everyone to our UK Innovate webinar featuring the Metals Innovation Initiative. I'm Landon Borders. I'm your host. I am the Executive Director of UK Innovation Connect, which is our industry partnership program for research and corporate partnerships and innovation. Thank you all for spending your Friday morning with us. I know that we've got lots that are planning to stretch this into a 4 or 5 day weekend, so appreciate you spending it with us. Today, we are fortunate to have Sam Ford from the Metals Innovation Initiative. Sam's the Director of Strategic Communications. VJ Caminini was going to join us today, but he has actually been called to Washington, D.C. on behalf of Team Kentucky. Which is great for Kentucky. He is there representing our metals industry and our state. So we wish him the best in those discussions. He might join us later on if he frees up, but he has been called to DC for on behalf of Kentucky. But we are fortunate to have Sam here. He has some very exciting news to share with us about the Metals Innovation Search Program, as well as the inaugural MI2 conference that will focus on the factory of the future. Now, before we get started, I have a few odds and ends to share with you all about our webinar. We are recording today's webinar and plan to share that on our UK Innovate YouTube site for anyone that's not able to join us today. We are also offering closed captioning for anyone that has accessibility needs. It's important for everyone to know here that, our goal is just for our audience to be as informed as possible about MI2, the Metals Innovation Search Program, and the upcoming conference. We do welcome any and all related questions and ask you to simply drop those in the Q&A feature down at the bottom of your screen. And if we've achieved this goal before our hour is up, then we'll gladly conclude the webinar and schedule so that we can go frolic, enjoy our lunches, or go join some family and friends for the extended weekend. Finally, I'd like to give a big shout out to our very own Kim Sayer and Jackie Green for making this event possible and helping us keep things running as smoothly as we can. So now I would like to introduce Sam. Sam has a presentation that he will share, and afterwards we will have a little Q&A. I've got my own questions for Sam because I'm extremely excited about this, and we'll certainly want to take any of those questions from our audience. So without further ado, we have Sam Ford, the Director of Strategic Communications for MI2. In this role, he oversees the communication strategy and execution for MI2 across all channels, working closely across the Metals Leadership Council, the strategy groups, and the MI2 Project Management Office. Throughout Sam's career, he's worked on various organizations on innovation approaches, audience engagement, cultural intelligence, and media and storytelling strategies. Currently, Sam also serves as the Executive Director of the nonprofit Accelerate Kentucky, which launched in 2021 as a result of Kentucky becoming the first U.S. state to go through the MIT Regional Entrepreneurship Acceleration Program, and which took on as one of its first major projects supporting the concept, formation, and launch of MI2. Sam is an Innovation and Culture Fellow at the Western Kentucky University Innovation Campus, and complementing that work, collaborates with the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce to help drive strategy for recruiting companies and emerging technology and storytelling to the region. He is a research affiliate with MIT Comparative Media Studies and Writing, a project co-creator with the University of Southern California's Civic Imagination Project, a Knight News Innovation Fellow with Columbia University's Tow Center for Digital Journalism, and a board member for Kentucky-based nonprofits Kentucky to the World, Canopy, and EmployWord. Throughout his career, Sam has worked on innovation strategies with a wide range of companies, including Paramount, Univision, and various other organizations. I don't know when Sam has time to sleep. Apparently he does. I hope he's well rested for us today. Sam, thank you again so much for spending your time with us. I know you're traveling with your family. Really appreciate you carving out some time to share this program with us. So would love to turn it over to you at this point.
Appreciate you, Landon, and glad to have you all join us today. Got a good crew here. I know a couple of you, but many of you all are new faces to me. So excited to share a little bit about what we're working on with the Metals Innovation Initiative. So we'll spend a few minutes just going through that, and then we'll start having some dialogue. And Landon will kind of take the lead on that, but draw from all of your thoughts and questions as well. So next up, I'm going to take an attempt at sharing my screen so that I can walk through some information to kick us off. While I do so, let me fill in a couple of the blanks about what Landon mentioned at the top of the call with our CEO, Vijay Kamanini. Kentucky became one of 16 states, or teams from 16 different states, accepted in a new program, a first-time program from the U.S. Department of Labor that was just announced recently. It's called the Job Quality Academy, and it is focused on increasing the quality of jobs and talent attraction and retention in our area. So Team Kentucky is especially focused on the manufacturing sector. The Metals Innovation Initiative is participating alongside the Workforce Innovation Board at the state level, Kentuckiana, as well as Blue Oval SK and the Trade Council for the building and construction industry. So good group of folks in this Job Quality Academy. They're all in DC this week in their sort of first in-person at the Department of Labor. And Vijay would love to be with us today, but as Landon said, I'm excited to see what that might bring us. But that kind of leads into the larger question. Some of you all are familiar with MI2 and have worked with the organization. For those of you that aren't, I thought I'd spend just a few minutes giving you the basics of what the Metals Innovation Initiative is. Probably the most important piece of it are the words that are contained on this slide. When we say innovation, it can mean a lot of things. We really wanted to put some parameters on what type of innovation we're talking about when we're working within the Metals Innovation Initiative context. That it's open innovation. These are projects that people are working on that has public transparency, that we're sharing with the ecosystem, that we're thinking about in an open setting and manner. Those could lead to innovations that could spin off, that could become companies. But in the state that MI2 is working, it's an open environment. It's a collaborative environment. Using the principles from the MIT REAP program, we're looking at bringing stakeholder groups together. That MIT REAP model involves teams to be founded that bring together higher education, government, the corporate sector, the startup community, and risk capital. When we went through that program with MIT REAP from 2018 through 2020, we're very thankful that the lead champion organization that pulled all this together was the University of Kentucky. In particular, many of your colleagues over at SEDIC, which is the part of the agriculture college, and focused on community and economic innovation throughout all the counties of Kentucky. So that idea of collaboration is really built into MI2's model. We're focused in particular on the metals corporate sector, but how do we then bring higher ed, government, entrepreneurs, funders into conversations on innovations, opportunities, challenges in the metals industry in particular? The third word, pre-competitive. We're tackling these companies, these metals companies. Many of them compete with one another. They have competing products, but there are many challenges that the industry faces that they work on together at MI2, all within, of course, all the legal bounds of the things they can't collaborate on. We're focused on a collaborative environment for those other challenges in a pre-competitive manner. De-risking. For the corporate sector in particular, that's one of MI2's main goals. How do we do and engage in some of the concentrated early stage research and development and ways of thinking that helps the manufacturing sector, which is among the most challenging sectors to incorporate innovations because they're factories that never stop running. with a high degree of volume of product being turned out in many cases, and a very large customer base dependent on those products. So any innovation can be a risk in that environment. At the same time, over time, lack of innovation is a massive risk. So how does MI2 help balance that out? So happy to go deeper into any of those parts of the innovation mission of MI2, but I think with the crowd we've got gathered here, many of you, hopefully this resonates. MI2's mission, our official mission statement, is to provide collaborative, industry-led executive leadership to attract and promote advanced research, sustainability, commercialization, and talent development in Kentucky's metals industry, and ultimately for Kentucky to be seen as the preeminent destination for metals innovation. This idea started as a white paper that VJ and I put together for Accelerate Kentucky once we realized that there was interest from the state government, from our university community, and from some corporate leaders at seeing something like this formed. That was a couple of years ago. MI2 officially launched only last September, $0 in the bank, no companies officially signed on, but we had our university partners, our government, and our corporate leaders all agree to come to the table with an intent to put this together. We came into that session without that stuff locked in place. Landon was there for that. We left that 2-day session with 8 member companies signed on and committed ecosystem partners. So that means we're basically just entering now, or soon to enter Q4. We're still rounding out Q3 of MI2's first year. So the programs that we've been doing some pilot projects, working on our structure, but the programs I'm talking to you all about today are among our first really large and prominent programs that we're culminating year 1 with. Just to say a little bit about the metals industry, some of you all know this, but it's why now for the metals industry. Kentucky's got a very large and prominent and growing metals industry. It's been doing quite well. Yet we know there are a lot of challenges ahead, and there's still so much opportunity for Kentucky to become known worldwide as a place of metals innovation. Our goal is to tackle some of those challenges. The talent shortage challenge is one of the most prominent that the industry faces. We're in a national conversation about how we reshore our supply chain for the next stage of advanced manufacturing, a question that many of you all are working on some aspect of in your research and your economic development work. There are all these new emerging technologies that make that supply chain reshoring an even more complicated question, because we're reshoring a lot of operations. At the same time, we're incorporating a whole new wave of technology into manufacturing. New industries need new solutions. That means they don't even come from just the same and regular expected places. At the same time, environmental sustainability is top of everybody's mind. So how do we manage all this change while also addressing creating more sustainable operations? And a problem that I know UK Innovate cares about deeply, there's also that challenge of so much great work that's been done inside our R&D sector. And yet the manufacturing industry is among the most challenging to have vendor-ready technologies ready to implement. So how do we address that gap between technologies that have gotten to a 4 or 5, but aren't yet ready to just be pulled into operations tomorrow with a vendor ready to serve? Those are the types of questions that MI2 exists for. That's the value proposition that our member companies signed on for. These are our launch members that have helped us really structure year 1. We're in the process, although I can't name names, of adding multiple new companies to that MI2 membership rank that will be announcing over the course of this summer as we started looking to expand on our mission. What we heard from many of these companies is they had single engagements in the past with a university partner for X, the economic development partners they work with, but there really was not a structure to allow this sort of across the board innovation work to happen. And that is the goal of MI2. How do we do that? Well, we can only do it with our strategic partners, our ecosystem partners. Some of you all who are on the call today represent some of these organizations, but in our first 9 months or so, these are many of the organizations who've come aboard, started working with us on one or another pilot project, and we could not accomplish MI2's work without these folks. The mission was let industry executives lead the way with their needs and wants and challenges, and the ecosystem will then work in response to those industry needs. We have built that in year one. Our metals leaders decided to identify 4 areas to focus this work around. Those 4 areas probably won't surprise many of you. They were the 4 main challenge areas identified by the metals companies. Talent and workforce was high on that list. Environmental sustainability. Grants and funding. It's a world that the metals industry doesn't traditionally necessarily tread in as deeply, but they know as they engage with the ecosystem, there's an unprecedented amount of federal investment going into supporting advanced manufacturing and really enabling the technologies of the next generation domestically. How does the metals industry really engage with the Kentucky ecosystem to work on that? And finally, storytelling. People know bourbon, people know horse racing, people know automotive, aerospace, but metals aren't necessarily traditionally top on the ecosystem's mind. Now we've got at least one metallurgist on this call. That's not true for him, and certainly there are plenty of material science folks at UK that's not true for. But as we look across the state, we realized the story and the strength of the Kentucky metals industry was often a well-kept secret even inside the state. And Kentucky isn't always known as it projects its image outward for the roles it plays in the primary metals industry and then everything that enables. So we've been working on these 4 areas with our ecosystem partners. I feel like in 9 months, we've started to see the results of making strides in different ways in all 4 of these areas. But that takes us to the project that we're talking about today. 2 projects we're talking about today. How do we widen that net? How do we really start to make good on this mission with some bold programs that can bring the ecosystem together and put a stake in the ground? So we recently launched, and this is our first time doing anything of the sort. So I'll repeat Sam's mantra. We'll never be as bad at it again as we are this week. That's the spirit that we have at MI2. So this will be our first time with the process. You all will probably ask many questions today or in follow-up to this that we may not already have the polished answer for. But the real goal that set off this call for innovations is we've got great thinkers working on problems in corporate R&D, in the startup community, amongst subject matter experts, as well as in our universities. Many of those innovations that they're working on may just be an idea on paper, right? It's stage 1 of that 9-part step. Some of them may be to a 3 or a 4. Some of them may be just on the, already a formed company, but not yet ready to be a vendor. We don't want to discriminate amongst those levels of readiness. We really want to surface ideas that tie to those focus areas that the Metals Innovation Initiative is focused on, and attract ideas that we can bring into this nationwide search. So those could, if we go back to those areas of focus that we have, talent and workforce challenges. How do we attract talent? How do we retain talent? How do we manage HR processes? There can be technology and innovations around many of those questions and areas. That includes all the way down to K-12 programs. That includes many issues around environmental sustainability, end-of-life recycling, and that includes incorporation of new technologies into metals operations that can increase efficiency, that can strengthen the quality of Kentucky's metals industry, and really increase that prominence of Kentucky being known as the destination for metals innovation. Do these technologies have to necessarily be particular to metals? No, they can be particular, again, to talent and workforce needs, to sustainability, to manufacturing operations in general. We really did not want to overly define and then leave great ideas out of this process. We've launched a site, which we'll share the URL for shortly. We're partnering with a Kentucky-based organization called Connections that are managing this innovation process with us. They're running this site and this application process. There's more information on this site with FAQs, contact information, etc. But really, we're looking for, again, all stage innovations. Those can be budding ideas to already revenue generating companies, but they're focused on these focus areas that MI2 has. We soft opened the launch and launched this in mid-June. It's running until August 15th. And you'll be seeing more and more about this as we get into July and August as we ramp up our promotion. We'll come back to this subject in a little while and answer any questions that you all might have. But before we switch to the discussion portion of the proceedings, I want to mention this process will culminate in MI2's first annual conference in Louisville. It's September 5th and 6th at the Marriott East. And it's going to be focused this year on the theme of the factory of the future. We're going to take, I believe it's the top 4 or 5 ideas that come out of this and have those presented at the conference as part of the program. And the ultimate goal from this call is to get these ideas in front of our metals executives and discuss some of the areas that MI2 wants to invest in as we start preparing for our year 2 priority projects. So what will that level of investment be? How will that take shape? It really depends on the idea, right? If some of our main ideas are university projects that would involve companies partnering or MI2 partnering, going after grants, that might be the route that innovation takes. If it's a formed company that some of the investors that are tied into the MI2 community might be interested in investing in. So we're trying to leave the process open for ideas that come in that have very different needs for how they would move forward or scale. But we do know that it's going to culminate at this conference, September 5th and 6th. We've launched pre-registration, and we are soon to be announcing our keynote speakers and sessions for the conference over the course of the next couple of weeks. So leaving you all with 3 ways to reach out on next steps. One is the Innovation Search website. The second is the Factory of the Future Conference website. And this is my email address. If any of you all have thoughts or questions, please don't be a stranger. Reach out. But Landon and I are going to have some discussion about this, and in the process, perhaps answer some of your questions here during the session.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate that overview. And if you want to stop sharing your screen, we can all see each other. Anyone that feels comfortable turning on their video, please do so. As Kim has mentioned here in our chat section, please do submit any questions you might have in the Q&A. But I've got questions that I would like to ask Sam, and I'm also representing some questions that have been asked of myself or Kim from some of our faculty and staff at UK. So hopefully, this is we'll answer some of the questions that others have on this call. And Sam, I think you've touched on a whole lot in your presentation, but I'll get us started here. And this is really about the Metals Innovation Search. And I think, first of all, could you help our audience maybe understand what type of information is required to submit an innovation, and kind of the follow-up there? What's your guidance on how to handle any sort of confidential information through that process?
Yeah, so I was just pulling up a little bit of information to refer to, but I think the quick version of it is our intent is to require only a small amount of information. I should flag that as you go through the process, you'll find some of the questions may not be a perfect fit. Contact us. Our goal is to bring in interesting ideas and to bring them in from a variety of settings. We don't want the way we've asked a question in the search to limit a great idea, especially when it's not coming from a formed company that already has it all figured out in terms of some of the questions that we ask. But really, your name, email address, general information, the name of your organization with a description, logo, so that as we're sharing the information, we have the logo, website, kind of stage of the organization. Again, some of these may not be perfectly appropriate as you answer. You say, wait, we're a new lab at UK. Well, are we a really new organization, or are we a pretty old and well-trodden organization? Those are kind of open questions that we welcome you saying, hey, how should I flag this? That's, those of you who are on the call from UK in particular, right? We won't have much trouble understanding where you're from. As we get, Innovation Co. Inc., a lot of these questions are really helping us make more sense of what is that, who is this, what stage is it at. I think UK, we will understand and get many of the answers to those questions. Mm-hmm. We're looking for what areas do you need help as an organization? And then collecting things like a deck and understanding for your idea and understanding, are you seeking investment at this time, or are you seeking other things like partnership or going after grants together? Again, because the ideas will come from really different directions. So all that is to say, the questions are pretty open, but if some of them don't really fit perfectly because they sound like they're skewed a little bit more toward a startup, there are certain questions we're really trying to get startups to articulate that are different for academic groups. Just put in a version of that answer that's best. We're going to have the same balance from a corporate R&D group. They may have a really new idea that's bigger than just their organization. They're not planning to form a company around it. They're just trying to bring the idea into this search. So that is to say, don't let the form's lack of flexibility, if you hit one, stop you. Email us. You can email me. There's contact information from connections in the FAQs on the site, and you can say, hey, this doesn't really fit. What do I put in here? That won't impede you from going through the process. Really, that's just step one to get you in the funnel.
Right. And it sounds like that, it's more of a questionnaire. And I've taken a look at it as well, rather than, this, I guess a lot of the folks on this call are used to, proposal development processes, et cetera. It seems a tad bit less formal than that. So that's good to know, not a heavy lift. I do want to reiterate that, my understanding here, and for others on the call, is that, faculty are welcome to submit ideas or technologies that may be pre-existing with applicability to the metals industry or manufacturing process that could then result in, say, a sponsored project. Just wanted to confirm that with you, Sam, and for others in this audience. So in other words, a submission could result in sponsored research from an MI2 company or companies, correct?
Absolutely. By the way, I'm in Chattanooga and it just started raining. So venue change unexpectedly. But yes, the goal here is to attract ideas, bring them into applicability with the metals industry, existing ideas you've been researching in an adjacent area, for instance, that could transfer into a metals manufacturing sector. Those, again, don't have to be material science. They can be, but they can apply to any aspect of the areas that metals are interested in. Think about branding, and just to go down a route, think about that strategic focus area of how do we tell the stories of the metals industry and innovations that are happening there. That could be We've had these discussions with some companies, a VR, AR, or XR immersive experience idea that could help young people better understand the metals industry. That's a tech innovation that the tech innovation has nothing to do with metals, but it could address a highly important problem to our metals companies if that could be taken to a job fair. When you can't get people into these plants very easily. Just as an example, there are in every one of those focus areas, potential ideas. They don't have to be formed companies. To Landon's point, they could be developed research in an adjacent sector that just hasn't been applied to metals companies before. I'll also say, don't feel like you need to stay in your lane. Right. If somebody from the academic sector has an idea that they do think is a proper startup idea that could go down the route of a company, we don't want to say, oh, we're only looking for research ideas from research faculty. Similarly, we may have entrepreneurs who submit ideas that aren't products that they could spin up, but are research possibilities that they think there's a great opportunity for. And the result of that being this entrepreneur's idea gets paired with university research partners, and we decide to go after some grants coming out of this innovation search. So we want to attract ideas from all our different sectors, but we also don't want people to feel like, well, you're only allowed to talk about what we see as your exact box either, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does, Sam. Thanks for articulating that. Now, I'm also aware that MI2 has, fantastic project management resources. You referenced the project management office earlier. Are those resources that could support any of these teams, if you will, if funded, to help with the project management and execution of any new funding in this case?
Absolutely. I think we want to leave those doors open. One of the routes this innovation search could take us, I mentioned we're hitting the end of year one for MI2. We're in the process as an organization now with our board. Our board includes, is heavily led by metals executives, but includes higher ed and government folks as well. And with our metals leadership council. Our discussion is, what does year two look like? Year one was setting up our process and doing some pilots. Year two, we hope to really start scaling up those efforts, going after, bringing in investor communities, deepening our partnerships and approaches to going after grants. As Landon knows a little bit about, MI2 has, for such a young organization, been a very successful part in its infancy and being part of some great grant teams, including multiple projects we've pursued in partnership with UK. But we really want to see how can MI2 even start taking the lead role in going after some of these grants and really bringing the industry perspective into this. So I think as some of these things attach and match to priority areas for our metals leadership council, some of these ideas could make their way into, hey, this is going to be a focus initiative for MI2 in year two. Some of them, again, may lead us to the investor community. Some of them may lead us to some of the particular companies saying, hey, we really care about that problem. Some of these companies have venture arms. So as we think of this, we want to pursue, depending on what the idea is, the route may be different. But another thing I'll say, it's why we're going to have a few finalists that are selected by our metals leaders that present at the conference. But we really want a range of ideas to come into this, because there may be something that is not an MI2 wide priority that two of these companies really care about. That idea might be number 10 on the overall list, or even number 35. But there's some metals companies out there that it's number 1 on their list, and there's a chance throughout this process to really connect the ecosystem together around these ideas. So don't, think of it less as a competition with a winner and more as a means of better bringing ideas into this ecosystem and connecting people together in the process. That's really MI2's ultimate goal is not really a contest, but how are we surfacing these ideas, deepening the connections, and helping set MI2's agenda, not just on ideas that our existing metals leadership and our core team like VJ and me can come up with. We want this thing is only going to work if we're bringing in great ideas from throughout the ecosystem and then making priorities and working on them together. So that I did sort of skirt a question you asked earlier, Landon, but on accident. The question about putting confidential information in, back to our mission is to be open and collaborative. I would say start by putting information in that you want to be shared with a range of these stakeholder groups, because we need those folks to be reviewing what's submitted. If there's some additional context that you say, hey, there's more we could share about this, but this needs to be under some sort of mutual NDA, highlight that in notes somehow in your submission, and then we can reach back out to you and say, okay, how do we, if we can't understand the full context of what you're submitting without understanding some stuff that is confidential, we'll figure out a way to say, how do we handle that in a manner that protects the idea, while still letting us explore how it might become an MI2 project.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Appreciate you looping back on that question as well. That's important here, obviously. I do want to take one question here from our audience before we shift gears to talk a little bit about the conference. This came from Jianxi. I'm interested in the sustainability aspect of the MI2 theme. What specific areas or topics are you or the industry looking into? Note the Department of Energy recently funded several projects on decarbonization of steel industry. Do you see a possibility for future funding there?
Absolutely. So let's take this in a few different directions. One is there are a couple of sustainability projects that MI2 is already working on in our pilot phase. One is some early explorations at how to think more deeply about moving to non-fossil fuel forklift trucks. All these facilities use a lot of trucks to move things around, both inside the facility and outside the facility. So there's some exploration there and thinking about in the setting, the unique settings of many aspects of these metals plants. What are the opportunities for electric, for hydrogen, for other forms of fueling those trucks? So that is a project that's already underway. Logan Aluminum is helping lead the way with that project, with several other companies working with them.
Looks like Sam froze on us just a little bit. I know he mentioned they were experiencing some weather. I do want to acknowledge a few other comments here. One from Monique, expressing excitement for Kentucky innovation. Thank you for joining us, Monique. We share that excitement. And from Jawa, that ISM will provide a few topics on collaborative research, which I think is excellent. Thank you for that. And while Sam works on a internet connection, I do want to reiterate again that Kim has dropped in a link here to both the website for the conference and a website for the call for innovations. We will shift gears in our conversation here to the MI2 conference that's coming up here shortly on September 5th and 6th in Louisville, Kentucky. We really hope to see everyone there. It's the first kind of open conference. Kim Sayer and I and Monique and a few others on this call had the great pleasure of attending one of the first MI2 meetings just last year. It's great to see the industry coming together with academia and our communities. Our partners in Louisville were there. I know Laurie Young is on the call. Thank you for joining us. But we really do want to see a good turnout there from UK. I think we'll learn a lot and get to learn more about MI2 together. And Sam, I was just sharing more about the upcoming conference, and figured you might have ran into some Wi-Fi issues there. But
Yeah, I think the internet just went out here in Chattanooga. I don't know if you can see out the window, but it's really
Yeah.
storming and coming down. But I switched to my hotspot, so I think
Okay.
I'm back with you for the duration unless the cell signal goes down.
Good. Good. Well, thanks for.
Chattanooga is supposed to be one of the most connected internet cities in the country, so surely we'll be fine.
Yeah.
I read the marketing.
Yeah. Well, Sam, I'm glad you're being resourceful there with your internet connectivity. But let's talk a little bit about this conference. And I'm really curious about this first question here, which was, how did you arrive at Factory of the Future theme? Could you explain that a little bit for everyone and how that might be relevant to the folks in this audience?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a couple of thoughts. Well, one thing, let me finish my thought on the previous question because there was one other thing I wanted to say on sustainability. I mentioned what our year one projects are. Do not be limited by those year one projects. We are working on phase two of those. If you have ideas that tie to either one of those, please submit them and share them. But we're not only looking to do 2 projects on sustainability. We want that to really grow and scale. So end of life recycling is a great example. Back to that point as well, where you see opportunities for research that ties to what you all are doing for the UK community that's here. And there are grants coming down the pike from the Department of Energy or otherwise that tie into that work, and it's relevant to steel or aluminum or copper or recycling or anything in the metals industry area. Don't self-limit those ideas because there are probably things you all are researching and thinking about that the metals executives may not even be aware of some of the research that's going on. So we want to be able to bring those to the table. Now, back to your question, Landon, on Factory of the Future. As we were working on our year one projects, we've had a chance to engage in some great venues. We're working with the University of Louisville and their Core 4.0 Center, which is focused on organizational readiness for the next wave of industrial development. We're working with the robotics group there. Western Kentucky University is part of those initiatives on the workforce side. How are we preparing the people who are ready to go to work in those factories of the future? And then we had a chance, VJ and I lined up 2 of our metals executives to come to the UK Innovator Challenge, Kentucky Innovator Challenge earlier this year. And that was the CEO of Wieland and the CEO of Logan Aluminum who spoke at that event, or North American head of recycling for Wieland. Wieland's an international company. And Matt Bedingfield and Mike Buckington talked about some of the challenges being faced by the industry, and heard, as they were at that conference, a lot of great ideas. So as we've been in venues like that, talking about MI2's mission, we really saw statewide from our university partners, from our advanced manufacturing folks, talking to groups like CAM, the Kentucky Association of Manufacturers, seeing a lot of interest in how are all these technologies coming down the pike being incorporated into advanced manufacturing. How are things going to be changing over the course of the next decade? How are we preparing for that? So that really was our kind of help set. We had an industry-led group, a focus or steering committee, gentleman, JD Atkinson from Logan Aluminum kind of came to us to flag this idea and say, I want to do an annual conference. And that group came together, kind of discussed everything they were seeing and hearing, settled on that theme. And so they've been working now on securing and finalizing the keynotes and schedule.
That's great, Sam. And I know you mentioned the Kentucky Innovator Challenge earlier and MI2's presence there, which was great. And, how we all kind of learned from each other that day. I can tell you, from my experience and in preparation for that event, one of the questions I got a lot was, help me understand the demographic, like who's going to be there, who could I expect to meet, what other companies are going to be there, and then also how much does it cost, right? So if you would mind kind of giving us a sense for those questions there, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you, In general, the tickets for the event are going to be, I believe it's $200 for the 2-day conference. There will be, if you're, member companies and a few other qualifiers that's different on, but just the general answer. And our goal is to bring in folks from throughout the ecosystem. We wanted a price point that got people committed for the 2 days. We have limited capacity, so we wanted to make sure we didn't have a lot of people sign up who didn't show up. So we wanted to have a balance between paid ticketing, and we're going to be announcing a slate of sponsors to help us keep those prices within check. But we also wanted a price point that wouldn't keep folks from participating from throughout the ecosystem. So our real goal is getting a mix of the university community, the startups, and folks, our metals leadership, but also some key folks from throughout those organizations. And then attracting new metals companies who aren't yet part of MI2, as well as folks in other parts of advanced manufacturing, all of whom use metals, in one way or another in their operations. So whether that's in automotive, our EV battery sector that is growing so quickly in Kentucky, aerospace, appliances, you name it, we want those folks attending the conference. But the real goal isn't, to me, success is getting a great balance of folks from the different sectors. That includes also our economic developers, our government and government funded folks. I see Monique's on the call. We certainly, and Monique has really been helping us make sure our innovation hub system, KY innovation hub system, know about this. So we get those support organizations there, as well as entrepreneurs working on this. So it's really a great set of partners helping us get the word out, because the balance is what makes this great. Academics have conferences where they see other academics. Industry folks may go to a chamber conference where they could see each other, or a plant managers gathering. We want that environment where they meet a whole host of people in the ecosystem that they wouldn't meet at most of the other gatherings they go to. And they come away with 5 or 6 new ideas to work on, and a new set of collaborators that they didn't know a year ago.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I appreciate your comments there about success being balanced, right? And having equal representation from all these sectors. That really resonates with me, and I'm sure this audience as well.
Well, I mean, I felt a very similar vibe with what you all put on with the Kentucky Innovator Conference, right?
Yeah.
The goal there is the mix.
That's right. And it kind of parlays here to one other question. And after this, I'd like to read a comment from Jawa, but kind of leading to Jawa's comment, it's really a question around how to get involved. Are there call for presenters? I know you mentioned that the agenda is kind of will be released soon, maybe a work in progress, but just quickly, I'll read Jawa's comments here. Your conference topic is excellent. ISM researchers, Jawa and Fazlina, have developed a new concept for the factory of the future by combining the emerging 6R-based sustainable manufacturing principles with the well-established reconfigurable manufacturing methods, and so on and so forth. It's called Sustainable Living Factories. He's suggesting he'd be happy to present, which I think would be great. Are there opportunities there? Has that ship sailed, or what say you to that?
Here's what I'll say. As we have a system of checks and balances, my process has been, as I've heard about things that really seem to fit the mission, as folks have sent things my way, I send it to our organizing committee that is industry led, and I know that have been landing a lot of stuff, but I wouldn't presume there's not an opportunity. I would love to pass something along their way. So if whoever the best person would be just wants to send me an email with a little more detail on that Sustainable Living Factories work, I'd love to send it along to that team. I mean, even today, because I know they're still, if you have a chance to kind of get it together quickly, just to make sure it gets all the consideration before they finish locking in plans in the schedule.
Great.
And the same goes for anybody's ideas. If you've got something here that you say, hey, it's a great fit for the conference theme. The other thing is, we were calling it our inaugural annual conference for a reason, because we intend to be doing this every year. And it won't necessarily be the same theme every year, but it could be. It's just like we have 4 strategic focus areas for year 1. We're presuming that all 4 of those, even if we did some great work with our partners, we've not solved the grants and funding partnerships question in year 1. It's probably going to remain a focus area in year 2. We may add some, we may end up with a new focus area in year 2. The same with the conference. I think this interest in the factory of the future could be really an ongoing theme. So if you all have an idea, even if it's something you're working on, but you're not ready to present it in September, but you say, hey, if you're going to start doing digital conferences, webinars, other things on this topic, I'd really love to connect with you on this. Please send it our way.
Thanks, Sam. And just a quick plug, shameless plug here, anyone on this call that has any interest in working closer with MI2, you may have some questions on how to do that. You may have interest in conferences, events, etc. I just want to, suggest you can feel free to reach out to Kim Sayer or myself. We're both on the call and happy to help in any way.